Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're calling in from. My name is Scott Bennett, and we're gonna cover quite a bit here in the next few minutes. And I try to keep this brief and tight, but I appreciate your time and willingness to jump on with us today. We are really excited as we sit in what I believe is kind of the precipice of this wave, and we're going to talk about this today. And I want to really kind of discuss this, and aim our conversation today to a business perspective. And I hope that's okay with everybody, because I believe that we have a tremendous opportunity that's in front of us. It sits in front of us now for the first time, and we've got a really good thing, moving in the right direction. Like I said before, my name is Scott Bennett. I've been with this company for a number of years now. I live in Las Vegas. I'm calling from Las Vegas, Nevada today, in my home, where I live with my wife and 6 kids. And time has definitely changed, and it happens to all of us, right? I mean, things happen really quickly, but this business has afforded us, quite an incredible lifestyle, and I've been, very grateful for that over the years. And it really comes down to this quadrant, and it's understanding this quadrant, understanding what this does for each and every one of us, that all of us fall into one of these categories. And this is Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. He didn't invent it, but he definitely made it famous. And if you haven't read his book, Cash Flow Quadrant, I highly recommend it, as it changes for a number of people, for me included. It changes the way that we think, changes the way that we operate. Because all of us fall into one of these categories, whether we're an E for employee, or S for self-employed, or a business owner. And then ultimately, the idea is to get money working for you and become an investor. And that's the whole concept, is that you're either trading time for money, which let's just be honest, that does not work. And it doesn't matter at what rate you're trading that time for money for, you are locked in that box. And for many people, what that means, when they notice that and they see that, okay, wait a minute, my employer has to pay me enough to keep coming, but not enough to set me free. Once that internalizes with everybody, they shift, and a lot of people become self-employed. And what that ends up being for most people, unfortunately, is that they just purchase themselves a really big overtime job, where you're the first in, you're the last to leave, you're the last to get paid, and you're carrying all of the risk that goes along with that. What we want to talk about today, and what I want to discuss with everybody, is becoming a business owner. Lining up and putting yourself with a system that can create leverage in your life. And this leverage is in the form of customers and people that are consuming our product every single day. That it doesn't matter ultimately, who you are, or where you're from, or what you're doing. You just have a customer that's just buying your product and consuming it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's disappearing, and they're reordering, and they're putting it on subscription. That is the leverage that we're trying to work with. And if you look at Wall Street, you look at the way in which subscription-based companies are traded. They're valued incredibly. They're highly valued, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They're a highly valued company because they have everything that is needed to help move that business forward. What I believe today, and what we're going to talk about, is this prysm technology, is having this device. And this device allows us to measure, where you're at nutritionally speaking. And so as we go through this today, I want to talk about the market demand. I want to talk about the company that's leading it, that you can put your faith in behind it. What is the solution? What do we offer as a solution? And then from a compensation standpoint, guys, at the end of the day, I'm I look at this as, I'm not a vitamin salesman. I'm not somebody that does this. This is just what I do for a living. That's not who I am, right? I am willing to, as an entrepreneur, I'm willing to put my time and effort into anything that's legal, moral, and ethical, as long as I get a return on that time and effort. And we're going to talk about that and how this, would, allow you to leverage yourself and do that. And then what is the timing of where we're at today? So let's talk about that market demand. The fact of the matter is the world is aging. There's 8 billion people in it today, but we're getting older as a world. We're not getting younger. There's more people dying every day than there are coming into it. And we know that. I mean, that's a statistic that everybody knows and tracks and follows. But the bigger part is modern medicine has made it so that we live longer. We have a longer lifespan. But is our health span or our youth span, what is happening with that? And the fact is, the gap is getting wider. And what I mean is, we live longer, but do we live healthier longer? And at the end of the day, if you are like me, you want to look, feel, and live longer as long as you're able to create and still maintain a lifestyle of your choosing. What I don't want is I don't want it to be dictated to me that, oh, wait, you're 50 years old, just you can't do as much, or you're 60 and we just do a dimmer switch, right? I feel like our body was built like a light bulb and just go out like a light, right? And that's how I want to go. I don't want a dimmer switch where it just dials back and I end up spending, the last 10, 15, 20 years in a wheelchair or a bed or, living some diminished life. But the fact of the matter is today, our lifespan and our youth span, the gap is widening. And we've got to do something individually to make that change. Now, this has become a buzzword all over, particularly social media, but all over. People are looking at biohacking. And let's just talk about that. What is biohacking? What does that really do? All we're talking about is making incremental changes to your body, diet, and lifestyle that improve your health and well-being over time. That's the definition of biohacking. Unless you're looking at social media today, and then the definition is just basically cold plunge and red sauna, therapy. The fact is there's more to it than that. And we've got to look at that and we've got to understand where this is coming from. One of the things that has developed and changed through the pandemic is the growth of the global supplementation market. Globally, it's over $300 billion. It's over $60 billion in 2024 just in the United States alone. Pre-pandemic, it was 35 billion in 2019. It's almost doubled. And the reason that is because people are understanding that I've got to take preventative measures. I've got to do something for myself before the world dictates my health, right? Before the pandemic, the masses, the majority of the people that are out there, they looked at it and they said, as long as I've got good insurance, my doctor will take care of me. And then the pandemic hit. And if you had comorbidities, all of a sudden your doctor's like, there's not much I can do. And that woke up a lot of people and said, wait a minute, I've got to do some things myself, to help move that forward, to take ownership of it. But here's the thing I want you guys to think of. If you're looking at this industry for the first time and you understand that 60 billion in the US, $300 billion globally, it's part of a $6.8 trillion global wellness industry. And that global wellness industry is projected to grow to 9 trillion just in a few short years. What is nice about that from a business perspective is you don't have to come in and be the demonstrable player. You've got to come in and look at the market and understand the technology, understand where trends are moving, and say, you know what if I can capture and I can just get a sliver of that and I can be a small fish, but in a really big pond. And I think that's appealing to most. I obviously am competitive and I want to get as big of a share as I can, and I want to participate in something that is as big as possible. And I think we have that. But the fact is, we don't have to come in and be so demonstrable that we've got to absolutely change everything, to be able to get any type of market share. And this is where we stand. When you look at those numbers in the United States, it's 3 out of every 4 adults say they consume a nutritional supplement on a regular basis. And of those people, you have no idea if they're working. We've all sat down, we've all looked at these aisles in the grocery store or Target or Walmart or Walgreens or Costco, or it doesn't really matter where it is. We've looked down these aisles and we've wondered, well, which one should I take? I know I need something. My doctor tells me I need something, But how do I know if this one works versus that one? Which one is the one that I should be spending my money on? And the fact of the matter is, you deserve to know. If you're a parent on this call, you deserve to know how your children are doing. Where is it that they stand? How do you know how they're doing and as they progress and they grow and develop and everything else? These are things that we're all thinking, but we don't know the answer. And we don't know where that sits. This is the new answer. And we're going to talk about this and why that is the way that it is. We've got cholesterol testing. Here's the thing on this slide. It's understanding that the importance of measurement is everything. What is not measured cannot be improved, and without the ability to measure, you have no market. I mean, I jokingly say this, but if I were looking at you today and you walked into, if I walked into a doctor's office and they looked at me and they said, well, Scott, you just look like you have high cholesterol. You should go on this statin drug, and this is how much of that drug you should take. That makes no sense. It absolutely, it makes absolutely no sense. It's laughable, to even say that. The ability to measure cholesterol has created a $20 billion market. And that's true of every single one of these different measurements and modalities. But understanding it's set for the largest one to look at. $60 billion spent on nutritional supplementation, and no one knows if they're working. They're spending on it because they know they're not eating it. They know they're not getting it in their diets. And yet we step in with the only device in the world that can measure whether or not your supplements are working, whether or not that's there. Now, from a company perspective, why should you align yourself with us? This company was our company Pharmanex, our nutritional division, was purchased by New Skin Enterprises in 1998. They are the #1 device systems company in the world. We have been, for close to a decade now. We got 40 years track record. 21 of those 40 years, we've done more than $1 billion in revenue. And last November, we passed $21 billion that we've paid out in commissions as we operate in 45 countries around the world. You do not have to be tied to your zip code, or to your city. You don't have to be tied to even your state or country. You can go anywhere that your contacts lead you, no matter where you're at. And for me, it's incredibly liberating, to understand that and to know that that's where we're headed. I want to talk about this for a second because the fact of the matter is I'm proud to be part of this company. And the reason is because we're a force for good. We try to do, it doesn't mean we're perfect, but we try to do good things in the world. And we try to use, our growth and our success to help less impoverished or less, privileged people out there. One of the main things, and I could go a lot of different avenues, but one of the main things that we've done is called Nourish the Children. Now, Nourish the Children has currently fed over 850 million meals to children, to starving children or impoverished children throughout the world. They've done that 98% to 99% of the time through a school feeding program. And the reason that's important is because it just leverages the food to educate more children, especially women, especially young girls, who now it's cheaper for families and people around them to send them to school than it is for them to keep them at home because we'll feed them while they're at school. And this is really, in my opinion, it's the coolest thing we do. We feed now currently over 120,000 children a day in over 40 countries around the world through these school feeding programs. And we hope that as you join us, as you be part of our company, that you will participate and help out with this, because it truly is, in my opinion, the best thing that we do. Now, shifting back to kind of this problem and this situation, what is our solution? Now, here's the founder of Pharmanex, Dr. Joseph Chiang, who came to us. He started Pharmanex after being the head of Wyeth Labs, and then we purchased his company in 1998. He said we use scientific and quantifiable research, to make sure that we can demonstrate the difference. What he calls the difference demonstrated. This is our scientific validation, guys. We have 70 scientists on staff. We have PhDs in 12 different disciplines. We own and operate 3 different laboratories. We've got a $40 million lab at our headquarters in Provo, Utah. We have a duplicate research and development lab in Asia. We have our own clinical research center as well. This sets us apart. We do double-blind, placebo-controlled, crossover randomized studies on the final formulation of every product that we bring to market, because we want to make sure, number one, that it works, and number two, that you can trust that what you put in your mouth, that what you use from our company will do exactly what we say it is. And what is in the pill is exactly what's on the label. And we really take a lot of pride and effort into doing that. And that's why we do this clinical validation. As I don't know of another company that spends more money than us on nutritional research and development, that does double-blind studies on the final formulations of every product that we have. I mean, we have one product that is guaranteed to increase your score with this technology, but at the same time has a functional MRI study on it. And in that study, it proves cognitive brain regeneration, or actually getting large matter in the brain to fire again after 6 weeks of being on the product. I've never heard of another nutritional supplement that has a functional MRI study on it. What it all boils down to, though, is you can trust the products that come from our company. We do what we say we're going to do. And ultimately, what that does, is give us that validation. It gives us the confidence and the belief to go out and talk to people. But that's all, again, it's all a story. It all puts us in a perspective. And this is why I'm with this company, is this device. Because this device is where the story stops and the science begins. And I want to take you guys down kind of a little bit of memory lane, if you will, but understand that when I first saw this device it was 22 years ago. It was almost 23 years ago. This August will be 23 years. At that point in time, the device was the size of half a ping pong table. So it was only one in the world. It was about 4 feet by 5 feet in size, had all these dials on the front of it, had this tube that went up, from the bottom and up through the ceiling tiles, that had a fan that was blowing air down on it. So very, very immovable. And I got scanned for the first time. And at that point in time, it took 3 minutes, to scan me. So I had to hold my hand in front of that device. And I was told something about my body that no one else had ever been able to tell me. I was told, that the health of my immune system, how many antioxidants were in the cells of my body, and exactly where I sat. And I am here to tell you, it was a terrible score. It really was bad. But I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And I tried to walk out of the room, quick and sheepishly. And the scientist that scanned me, I'd never met him in my life. I didn't know who he was. He looked at me and he goes, no, that's a terrible score. It's absolutely terrible. And I said, well, I remember looking at him and saying, look, I don't even know what antioxidants are. Now today it's a commonplace word, but 23 years ago, it wasn't so. It really didn't matter. And he looked at me and he said, what that tells me, in this 3-minute window, is I can tell you that you don't eat any fruits and vegetables. I was like, okay. And he said, and you don't take any nutritional supplements, or if you do, the supplement you are currently taking does not work. And it was like, okay, wait, how did you know that? How does that equate? And all of a sudden I started pulling this together. And this is what I saw, guys. This is the very first time that I saw this. What I was told and what made the most sense was that we have a legal monopoly in the form of patents, that no one else could do what we could do, even though there was only one device in the world, 4 feet by 5 feet. I said to myself, from a business perspective, I can learn the rest. I can learn what antioxidants are. I can learn about nutritional supplementation. I can learn how to build a business. But no one was going to give me an opportunity to do something where we had a legal monopoly, where no one else in the world could do what we're doing. And I thought to myself, I can figure out the rest. And so I jumped in based on that. Like, that was what drug me in, and that's what got me to work, was that ability to do something that no one else could do in the world. And they quickly came out with that first version there on the right-hand side of your screen. It weighed about 30 pounds. It connected to a laptop. It had its struggles. We actually had to harvest our own crystals to put inside of a laser to measure with that. but it could only measure accurately if it was between the temperatures of 70 and 74 degrees at 72 to 75% humidity. That was the parameters. And it was difficult, but it's still, guys, no one else could do it. We were the only ones in the world, and we were learning and we were progressing, and it had its hiccups. And then a couple years later, they came out with the one on the far left. And that far left one, now all of a sudden, it used a filtered LED light, and it could measure in half the time. And now we were down to about a minute per scan. The one on the right was 90 seconds, and so it got a little bit faster, got a little bit more accurate, got a bit easier to maneuver, until we got the one in the middle about a decade ago. And that one in the middle, has been absolutely amazing. Battery operated, Bluetooth connectivity to your iPhone or iPad. You can move it anywhere you want, scan people quickly, it takes 30 seconds to do it. That device has over 110 published peer-reviewed clinicals that prove that it's more accurate and reliable than blood serum testing. Yale University did a clinical on it, the 10-year clinical, and they said that after 10 years of measuring children as they grew up, they said, number one, it's the best way to measure fruit and vegetable intake in the human body. And number two, it was the best way to affect behavioral change. Guys, if you're a healthcare provider or even if you're a parent, those are two things that are very difficult to do. I have found it very advantageous as a dad to be able to scan my kids and help them make better choices and help them understand what their choices of what they eat, what it means, to where my 7-year-old understands, well, this food, if I eat this, helps my score increase. Instead of it making really abstract, decisions, this is where my body's at. Until today, we've got that one in the middle. That is called the Prism IO, and that will revolutionize the entire world. It will legitimize the world of nutritional supplementation. And I want you to watch this quick video about that. Guys, this changes everything. When you look at this, I can honestly tell you this really changes and something we've built towards for 23 years. Every single time technology has evolved and things have gotten a little bit better, the company has continued to invest. There are over $130 million invested into this device right now. There are few companies in the world that could have ever pulled this off and ever really put this together, because believe me, there have been others that have tried. But the fact is, this changes it. And why does this change it? Why, from a business perspective, besides just the patents, right? Everything's patented globally. We've got all of these, all these different patents protecting ourselves. But at the end of the day, if you look back, this slide right here, we have scanned over 15 million people in over 50 countries around the world. We've done it 26 million times. That is the largest nutritional database the world has ever seen. That changes everything that you're looking at. But what it ultimately does, in a very simple, straightforward path, is it allows us to create, use machine learning and AI in real time to use as a backbone for this device. So that when we put your finger on this device that now does it in 15 seconds, that we can absolutely know for a certainty because we've done 26 million scans. We've got 110 published peer-reviewed studies on the previous device. We know exactly what this device is measuring. And we know exactly how well it's working and know where that's at. And it allows us to give you a score so quickly and effectively that now you can look at this and say, I can get scanned. I can then recommend to you a product or two, to increase your score. We've got about 8 that are guaranteed to increase your score. And then we'll rescan you at 2 months. And if your score hasn't improved, we'll give you 100% of your money back. Now, guys, let me just tell you again, I told you from the beginning, I want to do this from a business perspective. And if you are an entrepreneur, if you're on here from looking at this as a business opportunity, which I assume you are, because somebody invited you to take a look, and you're on here on the middle of the day on Monday, and I appreciate your time. But let me just run through the numbers in my business for no other reason, because I want you, other than the fact that I want you to understand where this is headed, what this is capable of. And of the people that I have scanned over the course of the last 20 plus years, if we scan them, we get them on product, and almost 50% of them don't end up getting rescanned at month 2. And of those, and so we just say they fall off. Some of them, don't quite, it's not exactly 50%. Our number of retention is a little bit higher, but let's say 50%, because that's what we rescan. If they see their score increase and they reorder on month 3, at that point in time, we retain that customer at 75 to 80% year over year, meaning they continue to consume our product year after year after year, 75 to 80% of the time. And my average consumer, my average customer buys $156 worth of product a month. Guys, that's a legitimate business model. I don't care who you are or where you're at, or what you're looking at. That's something that you could build upon. And when you have a device like this, you can say, okay, can I get 5? Can I get 10 consumers? Can I get 5 to 10 customers? The answer is yeah, absolutely. You can do that. And then what can you find 5 other people that could do the same? And can we duplicate that out and build a legitimate business based upon subscription? Because my revenue that's generated every month, which is significant, is 88% of it is on subscription. That over 70% of the product shipped out of our company, out of our warehouse in Utah, is going to someone who does not receive a paycheck. It's going to somebody who just is simply consuming our product. Because that to me is a legitimate business. That changes the way that you look at it. These products truly do work. But ultimately I can talk to you for hours upon the clinicals and the research and the studies that have been done on them and what's been proven and how it's worked in my body, or other stories that I've heard. But at the end of the day, the story stops and everything begins with, how is this working in your body? And that's where it changes. And how many people of the $60 billion being spent on other nutritional supplements are going to be scanned by our device and then are going to take us up on a 60-day trial to see if our products work better for them and their bodies than the ones they're currently taking? I just think it makes sense. It's just straightforward. It's a seamless deal, seamless opportunity. And this is where we've come from. Guys, a lot of people look at me and they say, okay, this all sounds great, but you've been at it for 20 years. How come we haven't heard about this before now? And the fact of the matter is, because every device up until this one has been cost prohibitive. it has cost thousands upon thousands of dollars. It's very difficult to manufacture these devices. In fact, there's not a company or a manufacturing company in the world that will manufacture them unless we buy a large enough quantity at the beginning. And so that it's become difficult. And so as good as the previous version or the last version, the S3 scanner is what we called it, as good as that has been, there's only 5,000 of them globally. And at 5,000 of them globally, we will never legitimize the nutritional world. We just can't get the numbers. And I don't know if you've read the book The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, but he talks about 10,000 hours, and you've got to have 10,000 hours of doing something to get really good at it, to become a professional at it. And it takes that constant work, that constant effort. But at the same thing, from a company standpoint, there is a build-up process before you can, go viral, for instance. If you've ever, posted something on social media, it doesn't go viral the first time. There's a lot of components that go into it. You got to have the algorithm right. You got to have all these other things that, you got to have some type of a following and everything for it to then go viral. It never happens on, hey, here's my first post, and then away we go. So here's where we're at. We are going to place tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these new devices. The opportunity that sits in front of us today is the growth between 5,000, and we've got on here 25,000, but let's just go through the numbers. We're going to place, we're going to start with 50 of these devices between, end of June, beginning of July. And they're beta devices. They're going to be what we call, hut units. They're for home testing. And then in September, we're going to give all of the leaders, 300 of our leaders, a device in September, and those will be beta devices so that we can test the app and we can make sure we're working out the bugs and the kinks and everything that go along with that. Then in November, in Q4, we will launch 5,000 to 7,000 of these devices globally. And that will start the trigger, start moving us forward. Then in January, we will produce and be able to produce between 5,000 and 10,000 a month starting in January. And so this is the ramp up period. The urgency in my mind right now is how do we get from where we are, to the next stage, and the fact that we need entrepreneurs to be part of it. And guys, from a business perspective, these numbers, they're published by the company, they're audited by the SEC. They're true and real, but the fact is, if you're anything like me, your eyes went straight to the bottom number and said, okay, if I hit the top position in the company, I have a 3.29% chance of getting there. And here's my thing is, guys, if you're looking at that and saying that's monthly commissions and I have a 3.29% chance of getting there, then look at and compare it to whatever company that you're with right now. What are the odds of either getting to where you're at in your company or getting to the top of your company? Are they greater than that? Are they less than that? Start using that as a comparison. I looked at that and I thought the very first time I saw that, to be perfectly honest, I looked at that number because that's where my eyes went. And I said, yeah, but how many people are there? 4? Because that's the average of almost 1,200 people in 50 countries around the world. That is not just the United States number. That takes into account mainland China, it takes into account Argentina, Australia, Thailand, Taiwan, Europe, and the United States. And pulls it all together and comes with this average. I think those are numbers that we can actually stand on, that we can look at and say, okay, this is where we're at. This becomes, in my opinion, this is like a real estate type of transaction. Every one of these devices acts almost like a rental property where they scan people every day. And those people that they scan, some of them do absolutely nothing, and some people get on product and get on subscription. And you look at it and you say, what if I could get 50 of these devices out there? And again, I guess I haven't said this yet, but these devices will cost roughly $400 to start out with. And then as economy of scale, as they grow, they'll get cheaper. But that's about roughly where they're going to start, give or take. But what if every one of those devices can get 100 or 10 subscriptions at $100 a piece just for easy math. Again, you already heard my average customer buys $156. But what if we could do 10 subscriptions per device at $100 each? Lowest commission possible is $2,500 a month. If they did, 100 subscriptions each, which would really only happen if you put them in doctor's offices and locations and places with good foot traffic. That's asking a lot of somebody like me, who doesn't have that, but maybe you do. And you could get 100 subscription. The same 50 devices would be $25,000 a month. But what I think is really going to happen, what I look at is, if we're going to place, I just told you that the ramp up period, and we think we can place hundreds of thousands of these devices even by the end of next year. And at some point in time, there's going to be this tipping point. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But what if you could place 500 devices that get 10 subscriptions each? Now you're at $25,000 a month. And so you can look at it all different ways and you can start looking at it, but it comes down to how many devices are you getting paid on? And we've all seen this graph before, right? This first mover advantage. This is our version of it. This is where that's headed. You've got the S1, the S2, the S3. We've passed this innovators, and we are in this early adopters phase, and we're pushing into this early majority. But here's the deal. This is why I am so excited about the opportunity right now, because right now where we sit, we are about to hit this tipping point. This is, in my opinion, a matter of when, not if, any longer. It's when do we get enough of these devices out there? That's what matters. That's what changes everything. When we make that happen. And I don't know what the number is when we reach that tipping point and it goes viral or it becomes ubiquitous. When everybody understands that if I'm taking a nutritional supplement, $300 billion being spent globally on it, everybody at that point will understand, if I want to know if that's working, I need to be scanned by this device. We will finally be able to get enough of these devices out there because there's no more cost prohibitive nature to it. And we'll be able to get enough of them moving forward that we can now move it in the right direction, and that it will become ubiquitous, that people will understand that. Now, the question is when we hit that tipping point, and I don't know when that will be. I don't know if that's 10,000 devices, if it's 50,000 devices, or if it's going to need to be over 100,000 devices. I don't know when that will happen. I do know it will happen. It's just a matter of getting those devices out there. What matters most, in my opinion, is how many devices are you getting paid on when that happens? How many devices do you have out there scanning people and putting people on product when all of a sudden everybody starts to hear about it and it starts to run? Because that is what's going to determine your market share. That's when it goes over the cliff and jumps out there and changes the way in which you look at it. Guys, that's the timing of what we look at here today. That's what changes it. We will launch India as well at the end of this year. And that, just keep that in your back pocket. That'll be a tremendous opportunity as well. But we want you to get started with us today. And we're going to invite you to get back to the person that invited you onto this call. What I always tell people is, some people are really shy. They don't know exactly what to say or do when you call them back. So just tell them I'm in. Tell them I want to get started. They will send you a link to get started and create your free account. And you're going to start your own 90-day transformation where you're going to try this product. I would suggest that you have them sign you up as a member, and that then you order this bundle. This will give you a perspective of different products that are guaranteed to increase your score. Some that are just incredibly good for your gut health, to also help with absorption and help things moving forward. But you've got to try these products, figure out which ones you like, which ones you don't, take and then put on subscription, whatever it is. But you get started. Then they will convert your account from a member account to what we call a brand affiliate account when you're ready to sponsor somebody into the business. It's that simple. It's free. It costs you nothing. You get on product. based on what you want to try and use, and then we start building it forward. At the end of the day, guys, what this comes down to is how many of these devices can you get paid on? That's where this is at. It's that simple. And I just personally think that this business, while difficult, is a simple business. It's difficult and hard because it takes discipline, and everything is difficult and hard. You're trying to move something that is new and demonstrable that most people have never heard of. There will be hiccups along the way. It isn't all going to be roses. But at the end of the day, I believe this is to be true, that 15 seconds could change your life from a product perspective, from a health perspective, understanding where you're at, but also from a business perspective. And I promised you today we were going to talk about this from a business angle. And I personally believe that this device is the greatest thing that our industry has ever seen. And I hope that you get in and either dig in and do your research with us, get your questions answered, or you get back to the person that jumped on or had you jump on this call today and just tell them flat out, I'm in. I want to do this, because it is something that will and has the ability to change your life. So thank you. Thank you for being on here today. Thank you for your time and willingness to listen. And we hope to hear from you soon, and we will talk to you later. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.